Bill O'Brien lands another commitment in New England and shows the rest of the college football world that New England belongs to Boston College.
You are Locked On Boston College, your daily podcast on the Boston College Eagles. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, everyone, and welcome. This is Locked On Boston College, your team every day. I'm your host, AJ Black. I'm the editor of Eagle Insider and the host of this show. I've been the host of Locked On BC for almost 5 years, and I've been covering BC for almost 10. You're in the right spot if you want Boston College news. We have a jam-packed episode filled with recruiting news today, as we're going to talk about the addition of Merrick Jyn just 24 hours after losing Corinne Berry. We're going to talk about how Bill O'Brien is doing in the state of New England, region of New England, and who could be next. As we know, there's a new commitment. Now, I have been alluding to, if you've been listening to this podcast, that there was a commitment, and I knew who it was. I'm an insider, of course, but I couldn't leak it, but I knew it was coming. On Wednesday, Marek Jin of Phillips Exeter Academy in New Hampshire announced his commitment to Boston College. Now, he is an inside offensive lineman. He is from, I believe he's originally from Washington, D.C., but he is prepping in New Hampshire. And he is now the fourth offensive lineman that has committed to Boston College for this upcoming class. You know, for all that teeth gnashing for the last couple of years from getting 2 or 3 commits for offensive line, BC is now in April with 4, and they are looking at quite a few more and are in great shape for a few more. So this is not about those guys right now. This is about Merrick Jyn. And Jyn he chose Boston College. He had other ACC offers. He chose it over Virginia and Duke. From what I had heard, it came down to Virginia and BC. He had taken visits to Virginia a couple of weeks ago, and he was at BC last weekend. And that one last visit was what did it. Now, there's a connection with Phillips Exeter Academy. Quarterbacks coach Jonathan DiBiaso, who is the regional recruiter for the Massachusetts and New England area, he went to Phillips Exeter Academy. So that probably helped a little bit, I'm sure. And, if you know the staff, that's part of this is connections, right? So that could have helped. But Jyn, he's been on campus a whole bunch. He went to the cookout last year. He's been to multiple games. This seemed inevitable that Marek Jyn was going to commit. And so I look at this in the grand scheme of things. And I, again, go back to this 2 really big points that this episode is going to go with. One is you're continuing to build the lines, which I am absolutely pro that mind frame. Building your offensive and defensive line, winning in the trenches is absolutely critical for winning football games. It's as important as of having a good quarterback. And BC is making that a priority. BC now, with the commitment of Merrick Jyn, have 7 linemen, both offensive and defensive, committed. They're not signed yet. We just saw that with Corinne Berry. Committed for the class of 26. They are putting a huge emphasis on building those lines, and it's showing. And what the part that I love the most, and I tweeted this earlier today, is all 7 that they have committed right now, 4 offensive, 3 defensive, are from New England. And we'll get into what that means in a moment. So I love this. I think, you're building, you're putting your building blocks in place. Now, who gets the bulk of this credit? It's Bill O'Brien. Bill O'Brien obviously hits his ship that they're running, but it's also Jonathan DiBiaso. Jonathan DiBiaso, he's the son of right now Catholic Memorial's head coach. John DiBiaso is the head coach of Catholic Memorial. But Dibs, as O'Brien calls him, he has been critical in every single New England recruit that they've landed. His relationships with these kids has been absolutely critical. Even go back to what Corinne Berry said yesterday. If you go past all of his nonsense about Purdue, he wrote a single tweet that basically thanked Jonathan DiBiaso in that, it was hard because he wasn't going to be his coach. That's what these kids feel. And DiBiaso has done what they needed to do to, really re-solidify themselves in the New England area. Now, there's schools that are just not going to send BC kids here. I'm looking at you, Belmont Hills. They're just, whatever it is, there's just coaches that want to send their kids elsewhere, and that's why Belmont Hills sent 2 kids to Duke last year. But the majority of these programs, whether it's Catholic Memorial, whether it's Zavarian Brothers, BC High, Lawrence Academy, I said Zavarian already, Springfield Central, all the big schools in this area, they're all diving back in with BC. And even the schools that don't bring a ton of recruits, like Arlington and Northampton Willis, who, Dean Ruxnitis and Brady Beckenhouse are from. That is so critical right now that they've had that kind of success. So Merrick Jyn, it's so funny because I was reading up on his recruitment, a couple weeks ago, and Virginia was feeling like really gung ho about this. Their writer is saying that they talked to staff, and the Virginia staff felt like, positive that he was going to end up there. It took one more visit to BC, and it sealed the deal. I think the part of it was that he wanted to play closer to home. He gets to play closer to home in New England. So Merrick Jyn is a really good get. And we'll talk about what other linemen they could be going for next, because there's some names that are still out there. But you look at the guys that they have now. They have Merrick Jyn from New Hampshire. They have Mark Antunes from Catholic Memorial. They have Brady Beckenhouse and Dean Ruxnitis from Arlington and Northampton Williston. One thing I love, at least a couple of these guys are wrestlers. Love wrestlers on your offensive line. But they're all pretty well recruited players. Like, many of these guys have multiple. I mean, everyone except for Ruxnitis, I think, has multiple, and even he may. But I just love this recruit. I think this is another great get for Boston College, and that's been kind of the theme for 2026. Is the guys that they want to get, especially locally, are just committing, and that's a great thing for BC. Like, this is what you were hoping for when you had Bill O'Brien take this job. So good get. In a moment, let's talk more about New England. I'll look at what they've done and kind of talk a little bit about why Bill O'Brien is actually doing what some coaches have said that could not be done here in New England. I'll explain what that means in just a moment. The NBA playoffs are almost here, and FanDuel is giving new customers an incredible way to get in on the action. Right now, when you join FanDuel and place your first $5 bet, you'll get $250 in bonus bets if your bet wins. I love how FanDuel makes betting so easy, whether it's picking my Celtics or diving into player props. I love the 3-point props, whether it's Jason Tatum or Derek White for me. I love looking at those. And then they have steals, assists. You name it, they have it. Your imagination is your limit when it comes to FanDuel. Plus, after the game tips off, you can even combine live prop bets into a same-game parlay for a chance to win big. So don't miss out. Head to FanDuel.com and claim your $250 in bonus bets today. This is Locked On Boston College. AJ Black here of Eagle Insider. And I want to shout out all my everydayers, all of you who listen to Locked On BC every day. Again, I said it earlier this week. I love going to practice and running. I got my Locked On hat. And folks come up to me, "Hey, AJ," and they're like, "I'm an everydayer." It sounds kind of corny, but like, I love that we have our own language now here at Locked On. And for all of you out there that are everydayers, if you see me at practice, come over and say hi. I'm not going to bite you. Like, I'm if you're a gridiron person or whatever, and you get to come, say hi. I love to say hi to all my fans, so and listeners. So, it's great to see you guys all at practice sometimes too. Now, New England, we are looking at a recruiting cycle unlike anything for Bill O'Brien. For years, as long as I've known, been listening and following recruiting, there's been a saying that has been used, back to Frank Spaziani and Steve Adazio, building a fence around New England. There's this belief that some people have that Boston College should just own and take every recruit that's in these 5 states. And I have said before, that's not a realistic thought. But what does happen, and one thing that I feel I've never seen BC be able to do, is to keep the guys here that they want to keep. And right now, BC's batting 100. The only local recruit that went elsewhere is Anthony Hall, who went to UNC, but he was nowhere on BC's board. Like, yeah, he had a decent rating, and yeah, he went to another Power 4 school, but, they had other players like Merrick Jin rated higher, and they landed him. Every other recruit, you look at the top 10, it's BC, 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 BC. This is incredible. In just 1 year, BC found a talent-rich recruiting class and has right now knocked it out of the park. Whether it's getting Mason Leak from Connecticut or Dominic Funk from Catholic Memorial, these local recruits are all picking Boston College. I didn't think this was possible. And now the work is not done yet. You still have Carter Gooden. You still have Marky Wallbridge. Those are the 2 big ones. Carter's way up there, and so is Marky. And those are going to be the toughest pulls in this class. Marky has offers from everybody. Alabama, Ohio State, Michigan, Miami. I mean, like every school, and you name it, he has an offer from there. But I do believe that BC is in decent shape and will be getting official visits. We just haven't heard it yet because he is a very quiet kid. He does not do a lot of media. He doesn't answer responses. He's not like someone who wants to do interviews. He's quiet. So a lot of what's going on there is going to be a mystery. Carter Gooden was just on campus yesterday. He took a visit with his coach, Jeff Moore of Tabor Academy, and he was on campus. Now, there's schools that are looking at him. He's going to school in Massachusetts, but he's originally from Canada. So it's not like you're bringing in a local kid. It's a kid that goes to school locally, but he's originally from Canada. That might actually work against them because, if Michigan State or Penn State, which is closer to Canada, make, a push for him, they might be a better, more attractive offer. But again, I said it in the first segment, Jonathan DiBiaso, he is doing what Don Brown did in Massachusetts, but for Boston College. If you go back to the dude, Don Brown, who is now, I don't think he's anywhere. He was, when he was with Michigan, would just take anyone that they wanted to Ann Arbor, and BC just had to sit there and take it. Like, they just could not get guys away from the Wolverines. Jonathan DiBiaso is doing that right now. Like, any guy that he wants in Massachusetts, BC's landing. And he's been the lead recruiter on every single one that you've seen. Now, Matt Applebaum is the lead recruiter for Marky Wallbridge. It's a little different. But Carter Gooden, that's a DiBiaso guy. We'll have to see. Like, it's crazy now to think that your stud recruiter, the guy that is doing the most work and hitting the most home runs on in the recruiting trail, is your local guy. I mean, think about what BC had under Hafley. It was Azar Abdul Rahim, who was he was a ringer in Maryland, in the DMV area. Even like last year, it was Ray Brown, who was more positional in Oklahoma. It was a little different. Now you have a guy that is doing it in your backyard. This is helping their mission. Their mission is not to get every Massachusetts kid here. There are Massachusetts kids that have decent offers that aren't on Boston College's radar. They're just not interested in them. I think of Peter Bork. I think he's at, I forget what high school he's at, Maybe it's CM, but he's just not someone that they're recruiting. He's got offers from Florida, Miami. Like there's schools that really, really like this, Penn State, but they're not recruiting him. They have other guys that they're looking at. So I think that's an important detail that we all need to take into account when you're looking at what BC is doing. They're not going to land every recruit in the state. That's just not what they're doing. It's looking at what guys they're clearly targeting and can they close those players. Like Anthony Hall doesn't matter. You're going to have national guys that don't understand, maybe guys that work for like local newspapers or whatever. BC is not involved in him. They were not involved with him. So it's not a recruiting loss. Same thing with Bork. If he goes elsewhere, they're not recruiting him. It was like Cole Greer last year who went to Virginia. He went to school in Massachusetts. BC wasn't recruiting him. That's the story right there. The guys that BC really want to come here, can they close? I still think Marky Wallbridge is going to be a really tough one. Carter Gooden, I still think could happen. But every other one, BC has hit it out of the park. And so they have done what they've set out to do. They have already in 1 year done that. Now, you have your 2026 class in New England is just down to 2. It's the 2 I mentioned. And from what I've heard, 2027 right now might be a quieter group. You have Jackson Tucker, and there may be like one or two, Isaiah Rogers out at Springfield Central. There may be one other guy, but it's not a big class like this class in terms of New England recruits. That's kind of what this area is like. You're going to have years like this year where it's like a ton of kids that you are Power 4 quality recruits. Then you're going to have other years where it's like a couple and you're going to go elsewhere. I think 2027 might be more like that. We'll have to wait and see, how those other 2 go. But right now, with the addition of Jin, you're now down to 2 recruits in this area that you have left on your board. Everyone else is locked up. That's good news for Boston College. In our final segment, what's next? Who is some other names that could be the next to commit? Who could be some names that BC could be locking up soon? We'll get into who those could be and what's the next steps as spring practice closes down. I'll explain all that in just a moment. This is Locked On Boston College, AJ Black of Eagle Insider and Locked On BC hosts for the last 5 years. And I want to invite you all to become part of our Eagles Nest subtext. It is a program that you can try out with the promo code in the show notes, where you get text messages directly from me, your host, where I talk BC, give you all the latest updates, everything. I've been doing it a little bit more this week. I'm going to continue to give you little nuggets here and there. I hope you guys enjoy it. Check it out. And when you're done with this episode, check out Locked On ACC with Kenton Gibbs and Alex Dono. It's a daily ACC podcast where you get all your ACC news on YouTube or wherever you get your podcast. Now, with this commitment in, Boston College now has they're back to having 9 commitments. They had 10 before. Now they're down to the 21st ranked 247 recruiting class, and it's going to change. It's always going to change, right? But the question everyone has is, what's next? Well, Boston College has 2 more practices. They have one today, and their visitor list is pretty sparse. I have it up on Eagle Insider. There's one name, and then the rest are just local kids that are not going to be targets. Then Saturday, expect another 100 or so, and there's some big names coming. There are some definite names you're going to want to watch that I know about, and there's probably more that I don't know. Coming on Saturday. After Saturday, practices are over. And, the recruiting dead period, it's going to go until it looks like May. They're going to go into a contact period where April 15th to May 24th, so next week, they start basically being able to go back and start, visiting and doing all that other stuff too. So it's going to get busy again for the next like month, and then it goes into official visit season the week after. It's like it just nonstop for college football. It's like how these coaches actually live any sort of normal life outside of coaching is beyond me. But the official visit season is where BC will probably fill out the rest of their class. Right now, they have about, I think, like 30 official visitors that I've counted. Um, and you have a couple that I would say are guys I think could be the next commitment. And no, Carter Gooden and Marky Wallbridge are not high on my list of guys that could commit next. I think those two specifically will probably be guys that will wait until they hit either finish their official visit seasons or hit an official visit that just strikes them that they need to commit. One name that I think could, and I'm not sure where his head is at. It's just I feel like given where BC is at in terms of quarterbacks, he could be a guy that they push for is Femi Babalola. I think there's a chance that if BC makes the right pitch at the right time, maybe they could get him to commit. He's not like super high, but all these other guys, unless something changes, I don't see it happening. The other one that I like is William Vaughn or Tex Vaughn, that tight end that was here a couple weeks ago. I talked to him, and he told me BC was his number one. And that could all, I wanted to make sure I read some other articles. I make sure he wasn't saying that to every other staff that had him on campus. He's not. So, maybe there's your tight end right there. I could definitely see BC landing him. A lot of these other positions, I'm still not sure. There's Dejon Gaines, a defensive back. I feel like BC, I think he's from Oklahoma. I feel like BC's in good shape with him. The only thing with Dejon Gaines is that he's an official visit to Iowa State coming up too. He's from Oklahoma. Ray Brown was, I believe, the first guy that really recruited him, and he's gone. BC has no more connections to Oklahoma. So with Ray Brown gone, is he really still interested in BC? I still think there's a chance. There. Now, the other piece that's kind of come up is what I said on the other episode, which is transfer portal time. And if you're on social media, you're already seeing the transfer portal Twitter accounts, whether it's 247 Rivals, Mike Farrell on 3, they're popping up with new ones every day, because what ends up happening is players spring practice ends, and they end at all different times. I mean, freaking Stanford is just starting their practices this week, which is crazy. There's other schools that are already done. I kind of like what Stanford's doing. I wish BC would do that. Anything later for BC would be better, just because of the weather. But that's not here or there. Anyways, once their practices are done, that I believe it's short. I think the transfer portal opens on like the 20th or 15th. I don't have the date in front of me right now. So it's coming soon. And so at every school, it's just common practice. The coaching staff will meet with those positional groups and talk about where things are at, where people stand. And they'll talk about the opportunities everyone gets and the positives and negatives of what's going on. But you could see guys entering the portal for BC. And right now, we have no idea what's going on with this house settlement. So maybe they will be able to have some transfer portal slots with the numbers that they have. I think that's the other piece that's going to be coming up in a month or so too, is like, where does the staff feel they need to address in the portal? And I said, I gave you 3 positions, but who knows? Maybe there's other positions I don't know about. I wonder, where BC is going to be, how heavy they're going to go in the portal. I felt like O'Brien kind of dipped his toes in with a whole bunch of FCS guys, but now that you're into that second group, you're going to look at guys and say, hey, there's a position that we really need. There's this guy from a Power 4 school. Do we have the money to do this? I think that's going to be something to watch for too. So a great day for BC sports. Merrick Jyn was a great get for BC, and I'm really glad that he didn't end up going to another school, because he should play in New England. Well, I'm AJ Black. Thank you all for following along today. Follow me on Twitter at AJBlack247. Hit that like and subscribe button here on YouTube or wherever you get your podcasts. And tell your friends about Locked On BC. It does help us grow our show. I love to see us get more and more BC fans here. And thank you all for listening. We'll see you all again tomorrow for another episode of Locked On Boston College, your team every day.